Okay, this is about the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse, a small village in Virginia. The significance of this identification is that this was the final battle of the American Civil War. So the American Civil War ended at the time of this battle. Okay, so the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse occurred on April 9th, 1865, in the village of Appomattox in Virginia. But to understand the ending of the war, you need to understand a little bit of what led up to this point, which I'll get into next. So there was another much more vicious and destructive battle that occurred a few months before this battle that really was the end of the Southern chances of any kind of victory or even of a truce or what the South was hoping for. It, by this point was like a tie, basically, into which both sides would give out, but that did not happen at all. So a few months before the Battle of Appomattox, there was General Sherman's march for the North, which really destroyed the South and destroyed the South's chances of the war. Okay, so this battle before Appomattox is called the March of Sherman, or Sherman's March. And this battle changed the whole direction of the war. This is when General Sherman and the North completely changed strategy. As we've seen, much of the fighting was north-south geographically. So Sherman took the northern troops, a huge section of troops, and he took them out west and then curved around and then attacked geographically from west towards east. And the southern troops, so he flanked and made like a circular move and came in from the west with troops, and the South was just not ready for that. After 4 years of fighting, basically north-south geographically, so Sherman just rolled in, but it was a particularly vicious attack. Which before this, most of the battle was soldier versus soldier, but when Sherman brought the troops in, he basically burned down a number of houses in the South and destroyed railroad stations, and it was really the closest you could get to total war, a much different kind of battle for the Civil War. Yeah, you could see here Sherman's troops destroying the railroad station. Um, and Sherman's March has been called like scorched earth. It was in November and December of 1864, in which some plantations were burnt down, houses were burnt down, buildings were burnt down, and Sherman just really the first time cities have been affected in the Civil War instead of just soldiers killing soldiers. A number of civilians were killed in this, but it was the final destruction of the power of the South. And so that battle was a 2 month long attack, which really just totally gutted the South of any desire to win. And the great technological advantages of the North overpowered the South. The much stronger industry of the North versus the more farm-centered South, and the much stronger railroads and supplies. It really wore the South out industrially, and the South really had no chance. And the South was just falling apart by this time in 1864. Um, so now, a few months after that, that brings you to this much smaller battle, which formally ended the Civil War. And that's what your identification is about, not Sherman's battle. But the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse was on April 9th, 1865. And it was relatively small for Civil War standards. Um, So and Sherman, well, no, Sherman is not involved in this. Lee is the Southern general, um, was attempting to secure the railroad um, for the Confederates, which is called Appomattox Station, as you can see at the bottom of the map, right underneath Appomattox Courthouse. And so there was some fighting around the railroad station because the Confederates needed new supplies. And so Lee thought that he wanted to at least secure the railroad station. But like I said, all across the South was losing battles. And this was basically General Lee's, the leading general of the South, his last stand. There's a random picture here. I don't know, the location's not known, but we do know this picture was near the end of the war. So using modern the first photography in war, we see one of the soldiers lost, and even though it was a small battle, 100 Northern Union soldiers were killed in this final battle, including this corporal for the North. Um, and then the Southern losses was 400 approximately. So this is a much smaller battle than most Civil War battles, but it was the final battle, and it wasn't an infantry battle. Basically, this was a cavalry battle, so these were soldiers mostly riding horses. It was kind of like a chaotic type of last fight in which the South was really unable to have any chance of winning. That's a picture of the rail station in Appomattox. So Lee was complete. His cavalry was surrounded, and the final battle was lost, and Lee surrendered. You see in the newspapers of the time, April 9, 1865, Lee surrenders, and the Civil War officially ended. And Lee was taken prisoner momentarily, but he surrendered. And really, there was not a lot of revenge going on. And that would be because Abraham Lincoln clearly had stated he didn't want revenge at the end of the war. He wanted a peaceful ending. And that order from Abraham Lincoln, many times when the war ends, there's a lot of killing of the losing side, but Lincoln wanted there to be end peacefully, and he wanted to reunite the country so that this battle ended with a formal surrender, but it was very peaceful surrender without any kind of vengeance. So the war had ended officially, and April 12th was when it was formally signed over. The newspapers across the country stated the war ended. That's the house where the final surrender was signed, ending the American Civil War. And Lincoln, like I said, wanted a peaceful ending, and he wanted a peaceful reconstruction. And he had a plan. He wanted to, his dream was to have a constitutional amendment to forever ban slavery. And all of the ideas that we don't even know that Lincoln had, many of which didn't happen the way he wanted because he was assassinated, Lincoln himself, a few days later. But getting back to Appomattox Station and Appomattox battle, by April 12th, the war was over, and that was the result of this final battle. A more modern picture of today of this area of Appomattox. And then a sign where Lee surrendered to General Grant of the North in April of 1865. So the result of the Battle of Appomattox was the small battle, but it was the final battle. and the Civil War was over.